What if one courtroom could change the path of history? What if one man, standing almost alone, could turn every head and leave even the most powerful people speechless? This is the story of a leader who was not supposed to win, of a trial that was not supposed to matter, and of words that carried more weight than money ever could. Ibrahim Traoré walked into the courtroom as a man accused of standing against the world's system. Judge Thomas sat high on his bench, prepared to give a punishment no one had ever imagined. The fine was $500 million, a number so shocking it seemed meant to crush a man forever. Was this justice, or was this a message to silence an entire movement? As the cameras flashed and the air grew heavy, everyone believed Ibrahim would lower his head in defeat. How can anyone fight such power? How can one voice resist a system built on wealth and force? The answer at first seemed impossible. And then something changed. The courtroom waited. Papers had already been signed. The decision was already spoken. Yet silence fell so deep that people could hear their own breath. Everyone turned, waiting to see if Ibrahim would say anything at all. And then, with calm eyes and steady words, he began to speak. The moment he opened his mouth, something shifted in the air. What did he say? Why did the entire court seem frozen? And how could one leader's words carry enough power to shake even the walls of judgment around him? This was not just about a fine. This was not just about one man. This was about courage, faith, and the truth no one was ready to hear. Was this the end of his fight? Or was this just the beginning of something greater? Stay with me, because what happened next may surprise you more than anything you have heard before. And the final question is simple. Who really won that day? Judge Thomas or Ibrahim Traoré? The crowd outside the courthouse stretched down the street. Reporters held cameras ready, their fingers firm against microphones, waiting like hunters for the first sign of movement. Inside, the air felt tight, as if even the walls knew that something unusual was about to happen. A man was being judged, but what was truly on trial? Was it him or the system itself? Judge Thomas entered with a look of power carved across his face. Every step he took echoed through the hall. He believed this was his arena, his victory already written in stone. The fine of $500 million was not simply punishment. It was meant to send a message. Resist, and you will be crushed. Was it really justice? Or was it fear disguised as law? People turned their eyes as Ibrahim Traoré walked in. He wasn't wearing the golden robes of kings or the polished suits of Western leaders. No, he entered as he always did, calm, firm, and almost silent. But the silence surrounding him was heavier than shouted words. Why did so many look at him as if waiting for a fire to rise? Why did the air itself pause when he stepped into that courtroom? The journalists whispered too loudly for a moment. Will he pay? Will he bow? Or will he refuse and be destroyed? No one truly expected defiance to last in a place like this. A man against a system? It sounded impossible. Judge Thomas cleared his throat, and in a voice that seemed to echo across every corner, read the charges. He spoke slowly, savoring each word. Accusations rolled like thunder. For acts of resistance, for inciting unrest, for failing to obey the systems of order. Then, like a hammer falling, came the fine $500 million. The room gasped. Some eyes went wide, others looked down. This was not just a number, it was a wall built of money, designed to make sure no man could climb it. 500 million. Who could fight that? Who could possibly stand up after such? A blow? Yet in the middle of trembling voices and shifting chairs, Ibrahim did not move. He did not bow his head. He did not even blink. Was he frozen from fear, or was he preparing to strike in a way no one expected? The reporters scribbled furiously, already writing headlines, "Leader crushed by court. Historic fine silences opposition." From every corner it looked like the story was over. And yet, It hadn't even begun. Because in that silence, where all assumed the day had been lost, something strange began to rise. People leaned forward, waiting for the moment that many thought would be his surrender. Instead, what was coming was something else entirely. The judge leaned forward as if to measure Ibrahim's defeat. But could a man's spirit be weighed like a bag of coins? Could a voice be priced at 500 million? Or was the price itself proof that fear had already begun to spread among those in power? Children would later ask their parents where they were at that moment. Reporters would later admit that they had no idea what was about to happen when they wrote those early lines. Because when Ibrahim opened his mouth, and when the first words escaped his lips, nothing sounded the same again. But what did he say? Why? Did the guards who stood firm suddenly look unsure? And how could a man facing the weight of money, power, and authority suddenly turn an entire courtroom against the very man judging him? This was no ordinary trial. This was the opening shot of something no one could have predicted. The day a leader stood where he was meant to fall, yet made the ground shift below everyone else instead. And as those words rose, line by line, the question was no longer whether he could fight. It was whether anyone left in that courtroom could even stop him. The room waited in silence, but what was this silence really? Was it the sound of defeat or the sound right before a storm? Everyone's eyes were stuck on Ibrahim, his face calm, his hand still was. He broken already was the 500 million fine. The weight that would finally crush him. Or was there? Something inside him, waiting to rise, waiting for the right second to make the world listen. The judge leaned back. He thought it was over. He thought it was another easy victory. But did he not see? The look in the eyes of the man in front of him. Did he not realize that calm often hides fire? Did he not learn that silence can sometimes scream louder than thunder? Ibrahim slowly stood, every step echoed louder than the judge's hammer. Why was the courtroom holding its breath? Why did camera shutters stop in mid-click? Why did people who came to watch a defeat suddenly lean forward like they were about to witness the impossible? He looked at the papers stacked high with rules and judgments and asked one simple question. Is the value of truth just numbers? Is the worth of faith just paper? Is the price of courage something that money can decide? The crowd shifted. Some gasped. Some whispered, was this defiance or was this madness? Who asks a judge such questions unless they already know something more, unless they are ready to take the risk of losing everything? The judge tried to interrupt. He lifted his hand, but words did not come. Why was his voice missing? Why was authority suddenly weak in its own throne? Why did his eyes search for stability in a room that once bowed only to him? Ibrahim's voice grew stronger. He said, if this fine is to silence me, then why are you listening? If this punishment is justice, then why does it taste like fear? If this system is so powerful, then why does it tremble when a single man speaks? Reporters could not write fast enough how many questions were rushing through their heads. How could a man facing $500 million sound fearless? How could someone who should be crushed stand taller with every second? The audience stirred. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to a low roar. Were they beginning to see what he was doing? Was he not only defending himself, but also turning the mirror toward the judge and the whole system? He paused and the air grew colder. What do you fear more? My words or my silence? What do you protect more, truth or power? What will history remember today? A man who bowed down or a man who made the judgment seat itself collapse? The judge slammed the gavel. The sound was sharp, yet weak. Why did it not stop the room? Why did the echo die so quickly? Was this gavel not the symbol of control anymore? Or was control already slipping away for? The first time people were not just hearing a trial, they were witnessing a shift, a change that might not end inside these four walls, but might travel far further than anyone expected. Eyes met eyes across rows, strangers suddenly feeling something. Common were they thinking, could it be that if one voice challenges the system, then perhaps many can echo the same voice? Was this the true power of resistance? Not weapons, not wealth, but words that carry more weight than the chains meant to hold. The Ibrahim leaned forward, and his last question in that moment froze the judge cold. If you believe 500 million can bury me, then tell me, how do you bury truth? How do you bury faith? How do you bury an idea whose time has come? The silence after was not the silence of fear. It was the silence right before eruption. But what eruption would it be? Would the judge regain his power, or would the walls of the courtroom itself shake with a storm? No one invited, and as flashes hit brighter, and reports reached the outside world. The biggest question echoed across every listener: is this truly a trial against one man? Or could this be the start of a trial against the entire system itself? The judge leaned forward, his eyes sharp, but his voice shaking. Why was he sweating? Why did his hands tremble when he had all the power in law on his side? Why did one man's presence make authority itself stumble? He shouted, "Order, order," but was there really order left in that room? Was control still in his hands, or had it slipped away without him knowing? How could a single voice erase decades of fear in just a few minutes? Ibrahim did not pause. He pressed harder. His words became fire. Can justice exist if it is measured in gold? Can honor live if it is written out in fines? Can the truth bend to a signature on paper? The audience leaned closer. Some even stood up. Why could no one sit still? Why were eyes glowing with something new? Was it courage? Was it anger? Was it both at once? A woman in the back whispered loud enough to be heard. She asked, "Is he wrong?" And the silence that followed felt heavier than the gavel itself. If not wrong, then what did that mean for everything they believed about the system? The judge raised his hammer again, but no one listened. Where was his power? Was it in the wood he held, or in the respect he had lost? Could respect, once broken, ever return? Could fear come back? Once people had tasted hope, Ibrahim gave another blow with words. He said, "If money can silence truth, then why has this truth reached you even today? If punishment can end belief, then why are you still questioning inside your own heart? If justice was with you, then why do you look defeated while sitting in judgment?" The room cracked open with noise reporters fighting to capture every word, camera flashes blinding. But why did their reports not sound like defeat? Why did every headline now shape into something unexpected, into something dangerous for the one who thought himself in control? The judge looked to the guards for order, but their feet did not move. Were they soldiers of the system, or were they men with thoughts, hearts, fears? Could even they feel the weight of the moment, pulling them toward a different side? Questions hung like swords above every head. Why punish a man for speaking what millions believe? Why push down faith when faith only rises higher under pressure? Why crush courage when courage multiplies each time it is tested? One by one, people began nodding, then murmuring, then whispering louder. The courtroom which entered to see a silence was now becoming a storm. How long before the storm broke the roof? How long before Thomas realized that he was not judging anymore? He was the one being judged. Ibrahim's voice pressed deeper. He asked, "Is power sacred when it serves only itself? Is money strength when it hides weakness? Is fear rule, or is it slavery? Why should people obey a system that trembles at the sound of truth?" The judge slammed the gavel yet again, but every slam felt weaker than the last. Why did his voice fade when Ibrahim's words grew? Why did the hammer of law sound like nothing compared to the hammer of conscience? Then came the line that broke the court. He said, "If 500 million is the price, then I accept it. But understand this, I am not the one paying it. You are every coin of fear, every note of silence, every treasure of oppression belongs to you, not to me." And the crowd gasped. Who was defending himself, and who was drowning? Who was accused, and who was truly guilty? Was this man on trial, or was the very foundation of the West on trial inside that room? The gavel dropped one last time, but no one looked at the judge anymore. Every eye was fixed on Ibrahim. Every head turned as though the new seat of judgment was not on the throne, but in the heart of the man who just spoke. And the questions multiplied in every corner of the world when this trial ends. What begins? If a court cannot chain one voice, can it ever chain a million? If a fine cannot bury words, can it bury belief? If a leader can flip a courtroom, can he also flip a future? The echo of that day would not stay inside the walls. People asked, how much power do rulers really have if the ruled refuse to be silent? How long can wealth hold its throne if truth keeps rising? How weak is the gavel if it cannot silence the crowd? Was it only a fine, or was it the spark of something far greater? Courtroom was no longer a courtroom. It was a battlefield of words. It was no longer about one man versus one judge. It was about truth, staring into the eyes of power and asking the one question power never wants to hear. What if you are wrong, judge? Thomas sat stiff, his fingers tapping his desk, but every tap sounded like defeat. He once believed the gavel gave him strength, but why did every slam now feel hollow? Why did the crowd no longer jump at his command? Why did his voice sink even as he tried to raise it? Ibrahim stood tall and asked again, what is 500 million against 500 million voices? What is one courtroom judgment against the judgment of an entire people? What is law without honor, and what is power without? Respectees turned, reporters pushed closer. Guards looked away. Something had shifted and everyone knew it. They whispered, could this be the moment? History changes. Could this be the trial that ends? Not with a sentence, but with a spark. Ibrahim's last words cut deeper than steel. You place a fine on me, but the real fine is on your system. You try to bury my voice, but you only prove it is stronger. You believe the West will stand with you, but tomorrow they will question why you looked so shaken before one man. The room fell heavy, then suddenly it erupted. Voices rose louder than the gavel, louder than the judge, louder than fear. For the first time, the courtroom was not his. It was theirs. It was filled with something no system can buy. Belief cameras outside caught the storm. Reporters ran headlines. Judges rule. But people decide, leaders fall. But courage rises. Voices cannot be sold. Truth cannot be fined. The story began to break through borders, across continents, across oceans. And outside the courthouse, people asked the same questions. If this voice cannot be silenced, then how many more voices will rise? If one leader can flip a courtroom, can another flip a nation? If fear can collapse in one building, can it collapse everywhere? Judge Thomas walked out, his shoulders hunched. The crowd did not cheer. The court did not bow. Power had shifted and everyone felt it. The question now was clear: who truly paid the price that day? The man fined 500 million, or the judge who lost everything? His image, his command, his control. Ibrahim walked out, no chains, no defeat. The cameras rushed him, but his eyes stayed steady. He whispered, only, this is not about me, this is about us. And with those words, the trial no longer belonged to one man. It belonged to everyone listening. And now I ask you watching, what do you think happens when truth steps into a room built to hide it? What do you think happens when fear tries to weigh down belief with numbers, when control tries to fight faith with paper and ink? This story is not over. Not here, not today. What happened inside those walls may only be the beginning tomorrow. Another story waits. Another truth ready to rise. Another system ready to be tested. Will you be there to hear it? Will you stand when the next voice speaks? Will you see how far this spark travels? That is why I ask you now, subscribe, stay with us, join this journey, because the next trial may not just shock a courtroom. It may shake the world itself, and the question remains, who really won that day? Was it the judge with his gavel, or the leader with nothing but words? Or was it the people themselves who discovered their voice again? The answer is not mine to give, it is yours to decide. And maybe in the next chapter, we will see just how powerful that decision can become.